as a poll by More in Common found that 54% of the public support nationalising the company, with just 14% opposed. Let's speak with Matthew Lesh, Public Policy Fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Matthew, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I mean, ultimately, look, as an objective observer on this, I think, can it be that tricky to run a steel company? All you got to do is make some steel, surely, and we know how to do it. What's the biggest spanner what's the biggest steel spanner in the works on this then? Is it about supply of the coal? Is it about ownership, or is it something else?
Look, I mean, you think from a distance, perhaps making steel is a simple process, but it seems that the government has, we should remember, tried to nationalise steel at various times in the past. Clement did it in 1949. Howard Wilson did it again in 1967. And what we found time and time again was that there was a lot of mismanagement, political interference. We saw an era of industrial decline. And ultimately, the taxpayer was on the line for all these costs. And we shouldn't forget that the taxpayers already spent a lot of money trying to subsidise steel in the UK. Just a few years ago, the Tory government spent $500 million to try to get Tata's Port Talbot steelworks going, and it probably cost them like £500,000 per job. So this is an undoubtedly expensive and complex business to try to be operating. I wish Jonathan Reynolds well in his new role as master of British Steel. But there's a lot of underlying questions here in terms of whether or not this is going to be a good bet for the taxpayer. And then there's also going to be a lot of other issues that they're going to have to deal with. The UK has extremely high industrial energy costs that makes producing steel in this country something extremely expensive and perhaps not particularly viable without extensive subsidies. We have a planning system that makes it more difficult to update the steelworks and improve them and move towards greener forms of steel. And then on top of that, we have all sorts of net zero policies that add on costs for industry. So, on the face of it, we think we know how to do steel. We've been doing it for a long time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to end well for taxpayers.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? It's, there's a lot of considerations here. Making steel is one thing, making it value for money, profitable, and something that's not going to drain the taxpayers are correctly considerations that the government have got to weigh up.
Indeed, and ultimately we should remember that governments are spending our money. And that there are trade-offs involved here. We're paying some of the highest taxes since the end of World War II. We're seeing public services, a lot of them are struggling, and a lot of them demanding more money and need for reform. There's a bit of an opportunity cost here in terms of, well, what do we want the government to be doing? Do we want the government to be producing steel, or do we want the government to be ensuring that kids get a better education and that we can fix the NHS?
So if you were there, Matthew, sitting around the big table over there at the business department, Jonathan Reynolds and co are all there, saying, right, Matthew, what do we do? What's our next move in this curious game of steel chess? Where do we go?
Well, I think the government probably wants to try to get out of this business as quickly as they've gotten into it. I mean, there's a bit of a pride element about a Labor government effectively nationalising steel, but does the government really want to be spending the hundreds of millions this is going to cost, perhaps even billions this is going to cost, in order to maintain and invest into the steelworks? There's all this talk about changing to hydrogen-based arc furnaces. That's a very expensive business. Again, is there the money on the line to do it? But I suppose there's more of a strategic question here, which is, what are we trying to achieve? I thought Dan Hannan in the House of Lords put this quite well in the debate over the weekend when he made the point that it's not just about can the UK produce steel, it's about whether or not we have security of supply and whether or not we're reliant on one localized source, or whether we can get imports from all sorts of different places. At the moment, actually, funny enough, our number one provider of steel is Germany, followed by Spain, followed by Netherlands and Belgium. China is a relatively small proportion of that. So I suppose it's a question of where are we getting steel from? Can we get it for the purposes we need it, both I suppose civilian as well as military, and can we keep that supply going? Because it's not just a matter of the UK's domestic steel production, it is inevitably a matter of also those imports.
Spot on. Listen, great to have you with us, Matthew. Thank you. Matthew Lesh, Public Policy Fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you to him. Over to you on that one.